Well, hello, John, and welcome back. Um, Not quite sure how we'll be doing these, but I'll just do a brief introduction. So my name is Ark Telos Saint Amour, which is a long name, so most folks call me Tay. My mandatory pronouns are they, them, there. And yeah, you're one of my bosses who helped hire me as the executive director of Youth Move National. So it's like genuinely a pleasure to always see you and talk with you. John, did you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll jump in?
Hi, everybody. My name is John Dellick. I am on the Youth Move National Board of Directors and I serve as the treasurer. And I'm a person with lived experience in several youth serving systems. And my passion is sharing my story in hopes that it motivates others to overcome tough times and rise above adversity. Thank you for having me here, Tay.
Yeah, gosh, thanks for being here. And I love that because that's exactly what we're gonna do with the next 40 minutes or so is to talk about your lived and living experience and to talk about how you have been impacted by systems. I believe this is our third one now. We've done a few interviews, and I believe where we left off last time was I think you were giving us the details of your story. You were sort of walking us through the timeline, and we just got up to the sort of ATF secret indictment. So I'm wondering if you could maybe give us like a in the last episode to catch us up, and then maybe roll into what happened with that. And because I know federal prison was involved, and yeah, so if you catch us up, I think that's where we left off.
Will do. So, for anybody that missed the last couple episodes, you missed a lot, so definitely check those episodes out. Um, but I was briefly talking, and we're flashing back to the year 2016. At the beginning of 2016, I was in a very hopeless state after struggling for several years with mental illness and going in and out of jail and really not being able to feel happy with myself. And it led me to want to take my own life with a handgun. Um, Then, I was put in jail and sent on probation and ended up going to rehab as well because I was self-medicating. And all of that started to really produce some good fruit in my life. I was working with different people that had similar lived experience as myself, what we know today as peer support. I had people that were there just to support me, encourage me, and share their own lived experiences that helped me to see that, where I was at was not my end destination and that better days definitely did lie ahead. I just had to change a couple things about the way I perceived my life and how I carried myself. One prime example that I love to share is my peer support specialist lived a very has lived a great life. And when he shared his experiences to the point where he had put a gun to his own head, wanting to take his life, and he was driving a hoopty where he had to pretty much get it started like Fred Flintstone, trying to put the feet through the bottom of the floorboard and get it going. I would have never believed it had he not told me. And had we not had that trust. And I said, well, what did you do to go from that to where you are today? To where you have peace in your eye, you're smiling all the time, and you love your family, you have a wonderful family, and you're successful in your work. What was the secret? And he gave me several things that weren't very much secrets. It was just things that I wasn't doing very well. And one of the things that he shared with me was how therapy had such a huge role in his life. And for me, I never trusted therapists. I never was completely vulnerable. I never shared everything with them because I was afraid they'd either hear what I said and said I was way too crazy to be out in the public and needed to be locked up in an asylum somewhere, or, a bunch of other things where I thought if I had told them this, they would tell my probation officer and I'd be back in jail. My peer support specialist encouraged me to really take my treatment seriously. And that was one of the biggest steps in helping me to get on the right track and stay on the right track, amongst many other things that my peer support specialist has done. But that's just one example. And so my recovery journey was starting to go really well. I had a support group, people that I was interacting with on a daily basis, they were checking in on me, I was checking in on them, and I really felt like I was a part of something for the first time. Because I think in the first episode I shared I always felt like a black sheep, was kicked off the football team, and never really had the opportunity to develop these genuine connections that I'm really having now for the first time in my life. And my recovery journey has been going well. I've been living in a three-quarter house, sobriety house, some people call it. And we're into August of 2016, and I'm just waltzing on down to my probation officer's office for my monthly reporting. And I remember walking in there, and there's my probation officer and three other huge guys with guns, bulletproof vests on, and handcuffs. And I walked in and I said, hello, Mr. Probation Officer, how are you doing today? Great to see you. And then went up to the other gentleman from the ATF and said, hey, how you doing? I'm John Dellick, nice to meet you. And so, oh, John Dellick, great. I'm Special Agent so-and-so from the ATF, and I have a secret indictment here with your name on it, and you're coming with us. And right then and there, they threw me in handcuffs, took me to the federal courthouse. I was arraigned, and then shortly after that, I was hauled off to a federal holding facility. And the big question on my mind is what the heck just happened? I'm like, things have been going well. This is crazy. And come to find out that these charges were being brought against me for the handgun that I was going to commit suicide with at the beginning of the year. And part of me just wanted to give up, to be completely honest, when this happened. And I really just, my first few days in that federal holding facility, I contemplated, is this going to be worth it? Should I just find a way out? Because I don't know if I can take much more of this, especially after having hopes that things were coming together and then they were all taken away, is what it felt like for me at that time. I ended up going to court, the federal courthouse again for my hearing. And I remember just walking in there, and they load you up in a van, put your handcuffs on, drive us an hour and a half up to Cleveland, Ohio, where the main federal courthouse is. And the whole time people were talking, the feds have the highest conviction rate. Once they get your claws in you, you never get out. Another guy said, I've been fighting this damn case for 5 years, and I haven't even been sentenced yet. I've been in this federal holding facility this whole time. And then the third guy said, man, I hear your guys' story. There's one thing I know for certain, and it's that tough times don't last, tough people do. And that's why I'm in the law library doing everything I can to fight this case. And, it's different strokes for different folks, and you guys may be giving up, but I sure as hell am not. And that dude's speech literally motivated me to at least have the strength to persevere through the rest of the day. And they get us into the courthouse, they have us in the holding cell, and they eventually call my name. They ship me up the elevator in handcuffs and chains, and I walk right out into the courtroom. And I remember just walking in there with my head down, like, I cannot believe I'm in this type of situation again. And I happened to look up over to the seating section. And I remember seeing my mom and dad there, and they have always been there to support me through my entire journey. And I was very surprised because they were not alone when I looked over there. My peer support specialist was sitting there as well as my support group, all the people that I had been meeting. And they had made the trip up to come and be there and support me. And this was mind-blowing for me. This was something absolutely brand new because I've had my fair share of going to the courthouse and being in front of the judge and being on trial for stuff. And, The only people that have ever been there to support me is my mom, my dad, and then an aunt of mine, as well as some very close family friends. But my personal friends had never made the trip. And that was when I was local, you know. All these people made an hour and a half trip to come see me and support me. And right then and there, it just dawned on me like, I may be in a bad situation again right now, but whatever I've been doing is working because look at these people that are here to support me. I got, we went through the whole proceeding and they denied my bond the first time, but then the second time they released me on house arrest, which was a miracle. And so I was able to get out of the federal holding facility a couple weeks down the road. They put me on an ankle monitor, and I was able to go to an intensive outpatient group for my mental health and substance use disorder. I was allowed to attend my support groups, and that was about all I was allowed to do, which was fine. I was happy to be the heck out of there. Um, and my friends in the sober house that I was living with, they knew that I was just really starting to get into working out at that time, and I was kind of bummed that I wasn't able to go to the gym with them. So they brought the gym to the sober house. They would work out with me there. Instead of some nights, they would go to the movies, and when there wasn't stuff to do, they would all hang back and we'd rent a movie on the TV and all hang out at the house. And so I'm really feeling the love, I'm really feeling the support. And I just continued on my recovery journey at this time, and I really felt like things were working and, you know, put my fate into a power much greater than myself's hands at this time. Sentencing ended up rolling around a lot sooner than I had expected it to. And in spite of everything that was going well, I was still sentenced to go to federal prison. And part of me asked, this doesn't make sense. Why is this happening now? I've got a job, I'm working on a college degree, and, my recovery journey is going well. My family trusts me, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, now I've been on this spiritual journey long enough to know that when things don't make sense, there's a power greater than myself that I choose to call God at play. And there is a greater plan than I can ever imagine going on right now. And so I took that sentence on the chin. Ended up going to federal prison, and God bless my cousin's soul, and may he rest in peace. Before I went to a federal correctional institution in Cumberland, Maryland. He said, "Cuddy, I know you may not believe this, but when you get there, there's definitely going to be somebody that knows me and they'll look out for you. So don't you worry." And I said, yeah, Dustin, that was always true in county jail because I know you just know everybody. He just had the best heart and just, easy guy to talk to and knew a lot of people. And I said, but I'm going to Cumberland, Maryland, in the middle of nowhere. I'm going to call BS on that. Well, I'm glad I didn't bet him on that because as soon as I got there, there was somebody that he had grown up with and made the connection that we were related. And immediately this person took me under his wing, got me situated with some shoes, some clothes, some food to hold me over until I was able to get my commissary set up. And, this person really looked out for me because, I've had my experience in jail, but prison was something completely different. And I had no idea what to even expect when I got there. Um, and as I was there, this person and I started to really get to know each other, build a friendship, to the point that they had shared with me that while they're in the facility, that their institution, they're still struggling with substance use. And at this time, I had really just gone through a program that helped me to manage and surrender my substance use to a higher power. And I was seeing the fruits of that. And I said, hey, I'm no expert on this, but I've been able to find peace for the first time in my life by following, these suggestions and these steps. If you're interested, I'd be happy to walk you through what's been working for me and support you on your journey. And he said, yeah. So we started to, begin this journey where I was essentially providing this person peer support um, in federal prison. And it started to gain so much traction that other people were finding out about it. And we started to have a group in the psychology room on the compound once a week. And it really started to become a beautiful thing where people were able to find some like minds and share stuff that, they never wanted to share with anyone, let alone in a prison. Because vulnerability, unfortunately, can get you killed there. Let's just be real. So to be able to create a space like that is a testimony to God, the God of my understanding. That was nothing that I did, and I started to see how God's plan is unfolding in my life. Although I wish it was on a beach, and definitely not in prison. Beggars can't be choosers, right? And so I did my time, and I got a job on the compound and started working out with some other people from my hometown. And you know, what could have been a really bad time in my life was wasn't that bad, and I really got to learn a lot of valuable life lessons. That's not to undermine, some of the terrible things that go on there. And, I'm definitely not the same person I was when I was going in. I was just talking with another friend that has similar lived experience in the penitentiary system, and it's just like you go in one way and you come out different. And for me, there that vulnerability thing. You learn about who you can trust, who you can't trust, and either way, I came out better. I did come out wiser, and the tough times did not break me. They only made me stronger. And so I am grateful for those experiences, especially, shout out to my friends that celebrated my 23rd birthday there. I went to visitation because my parents had come. My parents came every weekend to see me, by the way. But they especially made the trip for my 23rd birthday. And when I was coming back from visitation, I walked into my cell, and my buddies had made a peanut butter deluxe cheesecake for me. Don't ask me how they made it. It involves coffee creamer, bread or ground cookie crumbs, and the rest is magic. And pizza bites with crackers, pizza sauce, and then you get some little piece of chicken or the mackerel or whatever, and just throw it on there, and you have your jailhouse pizza bites. And so, it was that was an experience I never thought I would have had in federal prison. Um, Came home and did some time in the halfway house. And it was an interesting situation being in the halfway house. And basically, my strategy for being successful in the halfway house was working as much as I could. I would, my first 60 days there, I wasn't allowed to leave there except for work. And so I spent a lot of time just being stuck there. And what I observed was people that got up and got out of there were more successful than people that just sat around. And so I went out and started working two jobs. I was working one job repairing cell phones, and my other job was working at a deli on Saturdays. And the only day I was there was Sunday, and I would get a pass to get out of there on Sunday once I was allowed to go to mass with my mom and a couple of friends. And that was my strategy for success. And the good thing was I was able to start saving up some money. So by the time I was out of there, I was able to get a place to stay, and I had my job, and I had this routine now. And I was really, hitting the ground running. And that was the best strategy I had, because I've seen other people, they just wanted to come home, readjust to things, take it easy. I've been down for X amount of years. I just want to chill out now. And unfortunately, most people that went by that strategy are dead or back in the system. And I just say that, you know, to help anyone that wants to know how to be successful when coming home. Um, I started working this job at, the cell phone repair store, hitting the gym, continuing with my support groups. And I did this all for about a year. And, I needed to be busy. This was a time in my life where if I stood still, I was going to sink in like I was stuck in quicksand. I needed to keep it moving. I had my PO, always checking in and just needed to keep blazing forward. But a year and a half eventually went by, and I'm working at the cell phone store, and I haven't really grown. Like in the sense that from a financial perspective, I'm still the same hourly rate, um, and my boss had been talking about increasing me to manager at some point, and that just those conversations weren't happening. And to be fair, I wasn't the best at repairing cell phones. So there is no hard feelings there. I broke screens, big hands. I'm not real nitty gritty with it. It just wasn't for me, But I'm always forever grateful to my boss because he gave me an opportunity when I needed it most. Um, and so I did some reevaluating at this time, and for me, prayer is a big part of my life. And I did some praying to God, and I just said, "Will you please position me?" Because where I'm at right now, just I feel like you have more for me, and this just isn't it. A couple weeks went by, and I hear about this thing called peer support, and there's an agency hiring in my hometown, and I'm like, huh, you know, I am pretty well acquainted with peer support at this point. What a privilege it would be to do it in such a formal setting. And it was for youth and young adults. And so I went and got my formal certification and applied at this organization in my hometown. And, I was scared at first because what was going through my head was all my past experiences of trying to find a job. And as soon as I tell them I have a felony or I've been in federal prison, it's my application goes in the shredder, and I never hear from them. And for the first time, that wasn't the experience I had on the job hunt. These people at this organization actually valued my lived experience and said, John, you know, your lived experience is what we need to help support these youth and young adults. And so I started working as a peer support specialist at this agency and just started to fall in love with it. I was working with youth and young adults, and I was doing things from going to adventure therapy group. There's this great park in Youngstown, Ohio called Mill Creek Park. It's one of the only beautiful things in Youngstown, Ohio. But there, we would do an adventure therapy group there every weekend, and we get to take the youth out and build relationship skills and teach them about nature. And for me, I was learning as well. I was just there providing peer support. There's actually a licensed clinician running the group. But I got to do what peer support specialists do. So I work with the youth that are starting to kind of fall behind or maybe going off down one way and everyone else is going this way. And honestly, that's what I do best. And it got to the point where we were on our way back from one of our adventure hikes, and two of the youth said, "Hey, Mr. John," and I always tell them, "Just call me John. I'm not a Mister. Can you please carry us back?" I said, "I don't know if I can carry both of you." But somehow I managed to. So I got one, lifted him up, got him, sitting on my shoulders, and then I'm literally carrying the one like a log as we're heading back. And it's moments like that that, truly I'll never forget and what make peer support so special for me. Because at the end of the day, especially when it comes to working with the younger youth, I just feel like a big kid with them. And I get to be the big kid that I needed when I was growing up. Another fun story about peer support is I would do um, childcare for one of the parent groups. So, a counselor would run a parent group for families, and if they weren't able to find a babysitter for their kids, they would just bring them, and I would get to be there, hang out, provide peer support. And one day I'm teaching them how to make paper airplanes, and we're having a paper airplane contest and starting to really build relationships with them. And I remember we end the group, and some time passes, and then next week rolls around, and I get there a little early, and I'm walking into the building, and there are the three little girls from last week's group that taught how to make paper airplanes with. And as soon as they see me get out of the car, they just run up to me with their arms, and they're no more than a foot and a half tall. And I know you can't see my height right now, but I'm 6'2". So seeing these little things run up with big smiles on their face just completely filled my heart. Um, and one of the most impactful stories is I've shared in these previous series my experience going through high school with an autoimmune deficiency and struggling with mental health. I was providing individual peer support to a young man, and I remember getting this referral form, and it was very similar. He does not get to school. His mom's an enabler, has health conditions, mental and physical. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is definitely someone from the school wrote this because of the bias. As soon as I saw mom's an enabler, I knew what time it was. And I was so excited to work with this young man because I'm like, this really seems like someone I can relate to based on my lived experience. We met the first time. I shared a little of my lived experience with him. And at the end of our first meeting, I said, by no means are you obligated to work with me and to engage in this service, but if this is something you're interested in, I would love to, provide peer support to you and be in your corner on your journey. And he said yes. So as time went on, we got to develop such a good relationship, and to the point where, I was able to understand the struggles he was going through at his own high school. And I said, well, is high school a goal of yours? Do you want to finish? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, well, let's look at some alternative options. And where I'm from in Mahoning County, Youngstown, Ohio, there is a trauma-informed high school. And so I said, are you aware of this at all? This might be an option. Let's look into this. We ended up getting him enrolled in there. He was able to get some credits done. And then life happened. And so we had to take a break. But I was able to be there and support him on this journey. So he was eventually able to get his GED. And more importantly, I was able to just be a lifelong friend with him. I no longer provide peer support at that agency, really as a clinical service anymore. But I still stay in touch with him to this day. And I'm just going to give a quick shout out to my buddy AJ. And God bless you, man, and God bless your daughter. He just had a daughter about a month and a half ago. And, you know, he has been as much support to me as I hope I have been able to be to him. And this is just some of the beautiful things of peer support. Um, and then, I've been providing this service for about a year and a half now. I enrolled in community college and was able to finish my associate's degree. And I attended a conference for the first time for mental health down in Columbus, Ohio. It was called the Systems of Care Conference. And in the exhibition hall, I saw this group called Youth Move Ohio. And I'm like, what is that? That sounds pretty interesting. And they were actually the ones putting on the entire conference. I didn't know this at the time. So when I went to the booth and no one was there, I'm like, where the heck is everybody? They're not at the table to give me information. Little did I know, I tend to jump the gun, and so I have to reel myself back sometimes. But I was able to get in touch with the executive director, Angela LaRiviere, who has just been an absolute angel in my life. She has provided me with platforms, training, and opportunities that literally have put me in this position to be where I am today. I wouldn't have known about Youth Move National if it wasn't for her. I wouldn't be on the board if it wasn't for her. She has just supported me on my journey in such a tremendous way. And so we had talked, and she said, "Hey, you're actually really providing youth peer support. And this is kind of was a new trend back when I was doing this. The state of Ohio did not have a youth peer support curriculum. And that was one thing that Youth Move Ohio was really advocating for at that time, a youth specific peer support curriculum. She said, it'd be great if you could join us. Your expertise would be really helpful as we advocate and start to write this curriculum. And I said, where do I sign up? You had me at hello. And so that was the beginning of my journey with Youth Move Ohio. Um, unfortunately had to pull away from providing peer support as a direct service to dedicate more time to Youth Move Ohio. But it's all been for the greater good. As I started my work with Youth Move Ohio, I also attended a college because I had completed my associate's degree. And for me, I was brought up um, that education is very important. That's something that no one can ever take away from you. Although colleges do seem more like a business nowadays than anything, I do take full advantage of the opportunities that I'm giving, and whatever I can do to learn more, I'm willing to do. So I applied to a couple colleges. All of them rejected me, except for one. And now, where I'm at in my personal spiritual journey, I just knew that was divine guidance. All those other places were not meant to have John Dellick as a student. Um, and so I started working on my bachelor's degree, began working with Youth Move to work on this peer support curriculum. And we did this was 2018, 2019, rolling into COVID. We finally finalized and have the Medicaid billable peer support service for youth in the state of Ohio. And we've been working on really just developing the workforce for that now. I was able to graduate with my bachelor's degree in business administration with a minor in healthcare management in 2022. And I was able to enroll in a master's program right after that for working on my MBA, which I have one summer class left, and then I'm done. And so, and this has all been through people supporting me and helping me on my journey. And while I don't have the opportunity to provide peer support in a clinical formal setting, I do get to work with a lot of youth serving systems where we get to figure out fun ways to integrate peer support to better support youth and young adults. And up until, this past year, I'd always still kind of wondered, like, what was really the point of me going to prison and going through all of that stuff? Because I don't want to change anything. I wouldn't go back and change a thing if I'm being honest. I'm grateful for the journeys and experiences I've had because they're so unique. And I've learned so much along the way, and there's amazing people I've got to meet every step of the way. But jail and prison sucks. I don't recommend it to anybody. And so I always had that question, like, why? Why did this happen? Well, back about a year and a half ago now, had the opportunity to start collaborating with the Ohio Department of Youth Services, which is juvenile corrections in the state of Ohio. And we were given the opportunity to provide a leadership and advocacy training, as well as informal peer support to youth that are about to re-enter the community. They have 60 to 90 days left on their sentence, and DYS identified 4 young men to be in this program. And I was able to go into there and basically do what I've always done, and I just share my story with them. And much like I've done with you on in these series, Tay, and just trying to keep it all the way real and be of support and encouragement, because I know when I was in those systems, there's little hope. You know, people say, "Oh, you know, you'll just be back. You can't do anything. You won't be able to get a job and go to school at the same time." That was what my case manager said when I was in the halfway house. So I know the messages that are being delivered to these youth and young adults, and they're not messages of hope, not messages of encouragement. And I'm forever grateful for DYS providing myself, Angela, and Youth Move Ohio the opportunity to start to carry a message of hope into these institutions. Um, Very exciting stuff. We're providing peer support to these young men. We're collaborating with partner organizations in Ohio to the point where we can have the young men in reentry. They'll create relationships with their peer support specialists prior to release, get connected to systems and services they need, and we'll be able to follow their peer support and have that service up until 2 years after they're off of parole. And as I look back on this entire journey, you know, there are two things that really stand out. The first thing, you know, is that God has always had a plan for my life, even in the worst of times. And the second thing is the power of peer support. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my peer support specialist, the community of peers that I had to support me. And they continue to support me. It's not something that, you know, just stops at some point. It's an ever evolving thing. And my network just continues to grow, you know, and one of my favorite additions over the recent years is Ute.
Well, that's very kind of you, John. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Wow. What a story, John. Yeah. I I hear when you're talking, I hear a lot about these amazing people in your life, right? All of these people that you've name dropped and you've brought up. And some of these times you're saying, oh, they just had like the best heart, or they were always smiling, right? Or always positive. They're doing so good. And it's like, how did you get there? And I just want to say, John, I see that in you. I see you with such a good heart and always smiling and always uplifting people. And I just I'm flabbergasted, like I'm floored, like how you got to this point. And you just bring so much joy and hope and love into people's life. And I so appreciate you. I really do. Thank you for sharing your story.
It's been a pleasure, and I thank you for holding the space for me
Yeah.
to, you know, and I have not always been this individual. I've struggled with my mental illness, but additionally, I wasn't always the best person. I don't want to portray this image of perfection because even today, I'm still far from perfect. But what I try to do is set the example that was set for me. And that's the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, you're a living example of that. And yeah, tough times will change, but tough people. Why do I always forget it? What is it?
Tough times don't last, tough people
Tough
do.
people do. Love it.